Hello, my name is Dr. Maya Rocky Moore Cummings, and I'm very pleased to be with Sisters by Choice. Today, I am excited to be a part of this 30th annual celebration. I think it's incredibly important that we share breast cancer awareness and education with women around the country. And Sisters by Choice has certainly been doing this for 30 years. So congratulations to the founder. Congratulations to all of the members. I am delighted to be a part of this effort. My story actually starts with my mother, but before my mother. 5 years ago, my mother passed away of stage 4 breast cancer. I watched my mother's decline. She went from being a very robust, healthy 6-foot woman to being a frail person, skin and bones, really, when she passed away. And breast cancer did that to her. In her heyday, in her college years, she was a basketball player. She took her high school college team to the state championship. She was the center, certainly an imposing figure on the court. And certainly my beloved mother, who loved her 3 children to life and nurtured us like you wouldn't believe. She was a teacher, but she was a supporter, our biggest champion, and certainly it was devastating to lose her. But it was especially devastating because this is a woman who always got her mammogram. She was a woman who never was without health. She had health care all of her adult life. She was the wife of a military man. And so she had access to health care. So the stereotype about Black women not having access to health care did not fit my mother. She kept meticulous notes after her doctor's appointments, even before her doctor's appointments, because she had questions that she wanted to ask her physicians. And so, it was devastating to us when they said that she had an irregularity and come back in 6 months. And when she came back in 6 months, they told her she had stage 4 breast cancer. Now, the reason why, for me, this story starts even before her diagnosis is because about maybe 7 years before that, Elijah Cummings, my late husband, found a lump on my breast. And I went to go get it checked out. They told me I needed a biopsy. And so I got a biopsy. And the biopsy said that the lump was fatty tissue, it was negative for cancer. But they did find a marker for cancer called LCIS. And at the time, I didn't know what to do with the information. It was just an oddity to me. They recommended that I go on tamoxifen, but I didn't want to do that because at the time I was actually undergoing IVF. I was trying to get pregnant, but I was an old bride. And so, I didn't want to complicate any potential chances for me to get pregnant by actually having, tamoxifen in my system. So I didn't do it. And I remember calling my sister and my mother and talking about the LCIS marker. And they didn't know what to do with it. And I think back now and I wonder if I would have been persistent about becoming more knowledgeable, if I would have been persistent and insistent on my mother and my sister about, making sure that they were checked out and double checked and triple checked, would things have been different? So fast forward several years, my mother passes away. We, of course, take care of all of the arrangements, going through the bereavement process. My husband becomes sick. And then we find out that my sister had stage 2B breast cancer. And this is my younger sister by 5 years. And I was just horrified, not just for her. She had to undergo chemotherapy. She had a horrible reaction. Her fingernails fell out. She had to have another surgery on her nail beds. I mean, it was just craziness. But I knew that it was coming for me next. I had been the first one to be diagnosed with a marker. even though it wasn't breast cancer, it was a marker for cancer. And I knew that it was coming for me next. I was literally walking around every day feeling like I had 2 ticking time bombs hanging on my chest. I felt that anxious about it. And so, my husband was in the hospital and we were talking about it, and he said, Maya, you gotta pursue every avenue. So we went to the breast surgeon's office, and we found out my options, and we came back to his hospital room and had this discussion. And I'll never forget what he said. He said, Maya, you always take care of everybody else. You need to prioritize yourself. You need to prioritize yourself. So I went ahead and I scheduled a preventative double mastectomy. And so no one knew what would come next, but what ended up happening was that my husband passed away in October of 2019. I ended up having that double mastectomy, in November of 2019, while I was running for his seat in Congress. And so, it was a whirlwind of events that happened. I did not prevail in the congressional race, but I am so glad that I chose to go ahead and do the double mastectomy, because, it gave me one peace of mind. Not that it's it's the solution. There's always the possibility that you could still get breast cancer. But there's a lesser probability. And I feel like I took an affirmative act to save my life. I feel like I took the appropriate measure to save my life, given the risks that I had, given the genetic history that was going on, or the familial history. And of course, given the LCIS diagnosis years earlier. And so I am, not regretful, especially in light of the coronavirus hitting several months later, and many elective surgeries, which mine would have been considered elective because I did not have breast cancer, being canceled in the process. Now, one thing you should know is that after they took the breast tissue out of my chest, they ran the tests on the breast tissue, and they saw at the cellular level that the cells were changing. Which indicates that I was on the precipice, likely, of developing breast cancer. So with that, I don't have any regrets about that decision. I don't have any at all. And certainly, if the opportunity is right for you, then certainly, take that option. It's one option amongst others. And this is my sister, me and my sister several years ago, but these are her children, her little girls. And I just decided to show you my sister's family, because, already those little girls are getting the same kinds of things that my sister and I had. So we've had bouts of, some kind of skin condition that they both seem to have developed, and it shows up when you're stressed out. And so, I think about, the genetic propensity of the things that we pass down health-wise in our families, and I look at these beautiful little girls. And I just think about one day they're going to be confronting the issue of breast cancer. One day they will confront this. And by then, I hope that we have done everything in our power to make sure that we've learned more, that we perhaps have a cure, that we can do better and be better when it comes to women's breast health. So as everybody knows, Black women in cancer, there are things that we are dealing with that are, in many respects unique. We die of breast cancer at higher rates than white women. And it's probably because we're more likely to be diagnosed with it at a later stage in its development. Now, some people attribute this to the fact that Black women are less likely to have access to health care. Same with Latino women, by the way. But as I mentioned, that's not always the case. My mother had health care all her life. They just missed it. But she also had dense breast tissue. So we can talk about that in a second. Breast cancer is the second leading cause of cancer death among Black women. Black women have a higher incidence of breast cancer at younger ages than white women. Black women are more likely to get triple negative breast cancer than white women. And oh my God, I had a young lady work for me years ago. She was only in her 30s. She's Latina. And she died at the age of 38 from breast cancer. So, the whole notion of young women of color having this challenge at younger ages has been absolutely real in my life. And there are a world of experts in this conference, so I'm not going to talk a lot about risk factors and the statistics because there are other people who can speak to this better than I can. But lack of access to quality care, even if you have access, the lack of access to quality care still remains an issue. And so with that, we've got to be insistent upon being advocates for our health, having access to health care. And I'll be talking about why it's important to be advocates, not just on the individual level, but on a system-wide level. Breast density. As I mentioned earlier, I have very dense breasts. My mother had very dense breasts. My sister had very dense breasts. Apparently, it's harder for them to detect and discern breast cancer with breast density being so high. Number of children in age at birth. Now, I have a higher risk of actually being diagnosed with breast cancer, or had, because my breasts have never lactated. I've never had children. And so that brings a certain vulnerability at a certain age. It turns out that the older you are at the age of childbirth, the greater your risk can be. And the younger you are at childbirth can actually be a protective factor in terms of preventing breast cancer. So the number of children you have and your age at childbirth are factors that are tied to breast cancer vulnerability. Overweight and obesity. Black women 80% of us are overweight or obese. And this really makes a difference in terms of your breast cancer risks after menopause, as the research suggests. So, we've got to be able to take off this weight and to keep it off. And of course, the inherited gene mutation. Now, let me tell you, I got the test for BRCA1 and 2. My sister got it. We have my mother's genetic materials, and we don't have BRCA1 or 2. And yet we obviously have some kind of genetic thing going on. And so, I have read that there are other genetic markers for breast cancer. I think that, we should try to find out if any of those are the kinds that we have. But also, I'd like to offer myself and my sister, and my sister's a physician, by the way. She's an anesthesiologist. But I'd like to offer my family up to any scientists out there that are actually mapping this stuff, because we are willing to actually be subjects to figure out what's going on genetically in our family. And so inherited gene mutations, of course, can be a risk factor. So what can we do? What can you do to save lives? I think a lot of us tend to think that, the issues are so much bigger, the problems are so much bigger than us, and that we have nothing that we can do, but we have a lot we can do. And one of the first things that we can do is self-care, ladies, self-care. Whether it's exercising and getting out there and walking and jogging or whatever, that we are exercising our bodies, that we are eating healthy, that we're paying attention to nutrition, that we know that the food on our plate often influences the health of our bodies, and making more strategic choices with regards to what we consume, both food-wise and beverage-wise, can make a difference for our health. And so with that, it's something that I would strongly encourage us to all practice on a daily basis. Self-care in terms of our physical wellness is incredibly important. And whether it's talking about, your spa, or, certainly your emotional wellness, if it's meditation, if it's spiritual wellness, your faith tradition, whatever it is, figure out what works for you and get into that zone of self-care, because it's incredibly important for your health and well-being. Examination is another thing that we can do. And it's something that can save lives. Having our annual mammogram, I think that there's even a new kind of technology that doesn't require the radiation of a mammogram. that you can explore, whether it's doing a self-exam at home on a regular basis. I mean, these are things that we must do and that we absolutely must do to maintain our health. Excuse me. And of course, learning about your breast cancer risk in terms of conducting a family health history is something that we can also do in order to take control of our health and make choices that are right for ourselves. You can also take action. And certainly, there are a lot of nonprofit organizations. Sisters by Choice is one. Black Women's Health Imperative is another. Those women in the blue T-shirts in front of the U.S. Congress, that's Girl Trek. And I am so excited to say that I am a supporter and a member of Girl Trek. It's a fabulous organization that is trying to get 1 million Black women registered and enrolled in their effort to get us moving and walking on a regular basis. And so if you have not heard of Girl Trek, I encourage you to Google them and to join their movement to become a part of the Million Black Women movement to walk. But they're in front of the U.S. Capitol, and they know that, if you advocate for your issues, and oftentimes we haven't effectively advocated to get more health dollars directed, for example, to the National Institutes of Health to make sure that we have investments, greater numbers of investments, greater numbers of basically dollars that are invested in Black women's health issues, women's health issues, but Black women's health issues too. I was a part of a group that met for dinner monthly a number of years back. And I remember there were about 20 of us at the table. And out of the 20 of us, 15 had issues with fibroids. And I was just like, wow, if that is the case amongst this random group of women, then we know that we're dealing with an epidemic when we talk about the larger issues facing Black women. And so, issues like, fibroids and Black women's risk for breast cancer and, any other number of issues that are facing us health-wise, it comes, attention comes with dollars, and dollars come from advocacy. And getting an advocacy agenda and pushing that agenda so that we have greater research that can help solve our issues is an incredibly important and effective way that we can help save lives. Speaking out is another thing that we can do. And so I just want to share this. Oh, wow, I don't hear anything. Well, I don't know if you can hear it. And I don't know why this is happening. So if you cannot hear it, please know that this past year, I was delighted to be called by the Ralph Lauren Foundation to be a part of their anniversary of their breast cancer prevention campaign. And this is about people around the world telling their stories with cancer and breast cancer. And you can save lives through storytelling. Just by telling your story, you can help people navigate their own challenges. You can help give them, educate them and give them instruction about what to do or not to do. You can inspire people. There are things that happen, and the power of storytelling is so incredibly important. And opening your mouth and speaking out about what you've been through is certainly incredibly important. And I say that especially because there are so many of us that come from families where you're not supposed to talk about personal issues. And I want you to know that when it comes to health issues, we can't afford to be silent. We just can't. We have to share our stories. We have to share our family histories with our families. But, to the extent that you want to share your story more publicly, I encourage you to do it. And so I was delighted to be a part of that. And then, of course, another thing that we absolutely should do is fall in love, but fall in love with ourselves. Ladies, as Elijah said to me, you spend so much time caregiving for other people. You got to care for yourself. A part of that is loving yourself. We've got to fall in love with ourselves. And I have no idea whether this technology is going to work right now, but let me hit play and see if it works. Well, it doesn't appear to be working. So that being said, I recorded a meditation on self-love for Girl Trek a while back, and I was very delighted to be able to share my perspective on what self-love means. And, if I don't think I have it on my computer. Yeah, no, I don't. So unfortunately, you will not be able to hear the self-love mantra. But know this, it does exist. It's a Maya meditation, and I just certainly encourage all of us out here to practice self-love. When we're on airplanes, they tell us to use the oxygen on yourself first, and that's the only way you're going to be able to help other people. Well, ladies, let's use the oxygen of life on ourselves first so that we can be of service to our families and our communities. And so with that, I'd just like to say thank you to Sisters by Choice. Thanking you for allowing me to share my story today, and knowing that somewhere out there, someone else is going to be helped. And I just thank you so much for your leadership. Take care.